Hello everyone, and welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. Happy Sunday. This is going to be the first astro weather for the month of March 2026 for the week of March 1st through the 8th, 2026. Excited to be back. I'm going to take you guys through all the important transits for the week, putting a special emphasis on Mars entering into the sign of Pisces. And this week, this is where drive becomes divine. Now, if you guys are liking these videos, please make sure that you give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Click that bell button below so you can see more of my videos. I'm here on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and Sundays using tarot and astrology to make sense of what's going on in the cosmos. Few quick love notes before we begin. We are going to be here live on Friday. We're going to be doing live tarot readings at 6 p.m. Central Time, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. Come and hang out if you guys want to get your cards read or consider joining my memberships. It's always a good time on Friday nights. All right, so the weekly vibe that we're going to be experiencing, we got a lot of stuff going on, guys. It's a bit of a doozy. As you guys know, we are in eclipse week. So keep in mind, there are still lots of shocks and surprises and things that are getting flushed out. We have also begun the Mercury retrograde in Pisces. I don't know if you guys are feeling it. For some, it feels kind of divinely inspired, and others are just feeling downright tired and confused. But if you guys want to see more about what this lunar eclipse in Virgo is bringing early in the week or the Mercury retrograde, check out the videos on the channel to give you guys insights for the 12 rising signs. All right, we also are going to be seeing Mars obviously kind of transit out of Aquarius. We're still feeling some of the shocks and the surprises from the Mars-Uranus square that we've been experiencing over the weekend. But Mars will be moving into Pisces on the 2nd of March. And I think this is a massive shift. It's like we're kind of going from I'm going to conquer the world to I'm going to kind of go with the flow, completely different vibe. And I think it's going to cool some things off, hopefully. We're going to be kicking off the week with the moon moving through Leo. So maybe on Sunday, you guys are getting creative, feeling kind of inspired and feeling yourself. And then by Tuesday, we're seeing the moon move into Virgo. This is practical kind of territory. And Tuesday morning is when we're going to see that total lunar eclipse at 13 degrees, about 12, 13 degrees of Virgo. So this is going to be the third in the series, and it's really asking us to release what no longer serves us in our daily lives. Lots of shakeouts when it comes to our habits, our jobs, as well as our health. So there's a lot of good energies for kind of kicking bad habits that are in the air. So work with that. And then by the time that we're getting through that eclipse, we have a better sense of our purpose, and we're going to watch the moon move from Libra into Scorpio come the weekend. Now, I'm going to be covering the major transit today for Mars in the sign of Pisces. It's going to be about 5-6 weeks of this transit. So remember that our drive now is going to become more intuitive, it's more compassionate, and obviously more so spiritually led. So beginning on March the 2nd is when we see the ingress. And if you happen to be ruled by Mars, so if you are an Aries or a Scorpio rising, your chart ruler's on the move. So pay attention to where the energy is shifting for you, as well as my Pisces risings, suns, and moons. But honestly, I think this is going to be impacting everybody just because of some of the conjunctions to the North Node that we're going to be seeing and the influence that's also that Mars is having actually on Saturn and Neptune and Aries. So if you happen to have any placements that are in Pisces, eventually over the next couple of weeks, you're going to have a Mars transit. And those of you guys who have anything in the mutable signs, so Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, particularly 7 to 11 degrees, are going to be feeling the effects of this early on. Now, here's the thing. When Mars is moving through Pisces, it is moving through a sign that is watery, it's emotional, it's sensitive, and Mars is a little bit weaker as it's moving through the sign of Pisces. Because Mars is traditionally associated with Aries or Scorpio, and it finds its exaltation in Capricorn, it's moving through a sign that is more fluid. This is about surrendering and also what's going on with some of the collective kind of frustrations, agitation, and also goals and what we're trying to kind of accomplish. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that we're lazy, okay? I really want to get clear about that because I think a lot of people see this as a lazy transit, and I do not. I think that this is just where our motivation is going to be shifting, and it's really reflecting some of the energies that are still lingering with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries. We feel less interested in winning, and we're more interested in releasing, letting go, closing things up, as well as sacrifice and being of service. Many of us might find that we're really drawn to creative pursuits, anything that involves kind of spiritual growth, as well as healing work. Pisces can be about working with water, so hot steams, saunas, baths, and showers can be really helpful. Anything that's going to kind of stay hydrating and also kind of get us rested, which is kind of ironic. Mars does not want rest, but we have to do the work in that area of our life. However, there is a shadow side to all planets, and certainly the shadow side to Mars in Pisces is definitely a little bit of like some passive aggressiveness. We can also see martyrdom, and escapism can run rampant. So it's a time to really watch your habits over this next couple of weeks. Some of us might feel like we are avoiding confrontation, and that may actually be to our detriment. Or some of us might experience kind of inner frustration and kind of anger that's kind of bottled up inside. And that's because we might feel like we're letting people walk all over us and we don't want to make any waves. So the key themes that you guys are going to want to watch for Mars moving through the sign of Pisces that can be, I guess, very noticeable is that drive becomes intuitive and also emotionally guided. Between the Mars transit and the Mercury retrograde, a lot of us are going to be having some very crazy, very vivid dreams. This is where like the subconscious is like working on overdrive. We might notice that we're exhausted. We might also notice that we're having nightmares. So putting a dish of salt in your bedroom, smudging it out, burning some incense or some aromatherapy just to protect your sacred space over the next couple of weeks is very important. Watch for drive feeling a little bit more intuitive and emotionally guided. There's going to be some emotional things that are going to come up. We're going to have to ask ourselves, are we taking the necessary steps forward to confront things that we have not been wanting to kind of acknowledge? We might also see that there is a lot of like compassionate activism that's kind of arising up. Spiritual and creative pursuits get a surge, especially anything that involves dancing, drumming, anything that's connecting to shamanic work. Hot yoga can also be really great here as well. And I do think that we're going to be really looking at the themes of fighting, right? Because Mars is about fighting. He's kind of a warrior. So we're going to be looking at things a little bit different now. I think that Mars in Pisces can be a call collectively to end violence, to end conflict, to end war. And we might see with the Mercury retrograde that there is some sense of renegotiating like hostile kind of interactions that we're having with other countries. Obviously, Mars can be about weapons, and it can also be about Navy deployment or things that are going on around coastal cities. And I think that with this transit, the positive is that we have to really look at, where am I getting burnt out? Where is my energy going? Where is there like a leak in my energetic field? Because sometimes when Mars is in Pisces, we have a tendency to kind of put others' needs before our own. And so that's playing off of the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, which is still kind of lingering around right now. Be careful of what your energy is kind of telling you and what you're sacrificing for things that feel like endless battles or battles that you just can't win. Yes, energy levels are going to be up and down. Rest is definitely part of the work. So if your body's telling you you need to take a nap or you need to, take a day off or take a mental health day, that might be part of the cure. And to navigate this, what you do want to do is channel this into a spiritual practice, creative projects, any healing work. I love doing sauna works when Mars is going through Pisces. I also really love anything that's connected to acupuncture, anything that's connected to working with body movement, anything that's flow related. It can be very helpful. But also if you work in film or photography or anything that deals with visual type of stuff, you're probably going to be feeling very inspired with this transit. Remember to set intentions around compassionate action and also embrace rest as something that's considered to be productive. I think the Virgo eclipse is signaling a lot of the same things this week. Use your intuition to kind of guide your decisions. What we don't want to do is avoid necessary confrontations. Guys, I'm going to tell you right now, between now and the end of April, there are certain things that we have to become aware of, certain things that we have to confront globally as well as within ourselves. And it might be some stuff that we've been putting on back burner because we don't want conflict, but we need to find a way to actually work through some of the conflict and seek resolution in a peaceful manner. Use going with the flow as an excuse for, passivity is not going to work through this transit, because you're going to start to notice where if you're not wanting to make waves, it's actually going to cause more exhaustion and frustration for you internally. We also want to watch for escaping into substances or distraction, self-undoing tendencies. So a lot more people are going to be feeling impulsively that they want to be like binge watching television or, Netflix. They're also going to find that anything that deals with alcohol, drugs, as well as anything that's going to be connected to stuff that we are smoking. Mars can be about stuff that's connected to smoke or vapor. Likely we're going to hear some news that's coming out potentially about pharmaceuticals or things that are connected to the cannabis industry or things that might even be connected to smoking cigarettes or nicotine. So if you're somebody who's wanting to quit some of these habits, this can be a good time to do that. Watch for the self-undoing tendencies that can kind of come up, the stuff that we kind of cling to kind of numb how we're feeling. Mars in Pisces is very much a spiritual kind of warrior energy. It's not meant to be combative, but it will fight for the collective, for healing, and those who are underrepresented. So if you're wanting to get involved with a cause, dedicate time or some service, potentially even some funds, this can be a great way to really kind of help people who are in need. We can see lots of like swift action and kind of rescue things that are connected with this transit, particularly if it deals with water. So be mindful. Mars can be indicating that people are going to be more prone to, having drowning issues or issues with boating, jet skiing, anything that goes fast. So if you're somebody who's doing water sports, make sure you're being really careful. Don't be kind of drinking and boating or being on the water if you can help it, and watch for those accidents because that can definitely happen. Now, I'm keeping an eye on Jupiter in Cancer because Jupiter is the dispositor of Mars for the next several weeks. And you'll see at the beginning of March, around the 10th, Jupiter is going to go direct. So because Jupiter is kind of the host and really influencing all of these mess of planets that are going through Pisces right now, it's great that Jupiter is in its exaltation. So when it's in Cancer, it basically means it's adding more intuition. It's adding more nurturing. It's a very protective, kind of like emotionally expansive vibe, and it's giving a lot of emotional and intuitive qualities to Mars. And I keep saying it's like being divinely directed, divinely protected. Mars is that direction. Jupiter is going to be that protection. So we'll see that, drive flows through themes of wherever Cancer is in your chart. But specifically, Cancer is going to be about the home, it's the family, emotional security, and also caring for others at a deep level. Now, we will see that motivation will also feel a little bit more heartfelt and protective rather than just purely aggressive. Mars is also heavily influencing both Saturn and Neptune right now, and we will see as Mars is going through Pisces at some point in Aries season next month, all the cluster of planets conjuncting Saturn and Neptune, it'll be influencing that as well. So with Saturn and Neptune being in a sign that's ruled by Mars, right? It's in Aries. Mars now becomes kind of part of the party that's going on with some of the conjunctions in Aries. This will also soften some of Saturn's structure and some of Neptune's kind of dreams or illusions through kind of Piscean compassion and intuition. So boundaries is very much a Saturn thing, and spiritual ideals is very much a Neptune thing, and it's going to get filtered through emotional surrender, maybe empathy as well as collective healing, rather than into more kind of like direct Aries in your face force. It can bring disciplined spiritual pursuits, but also there is a risk of diffused energy and potentially even avoidance. So we want to watch for that. I think the Saturn-Neptune conjunction would say that regardless of where Mars is. And remember, Pisces is where things go to kind of conclude and complete, things that are happening spiritually or kind of out in the ethers, and then how it becomes actualized, realized, and impacting us on an everyday kind of level. You're going to hear some astrologers that are going to be talking about potential threats of war. I think that is possible. I think that's possible at any point in time, but particularly foreign wars, cultural wars, religious wars, things like that is very much Mars and Pisces. And we can see that as the North Node is coming into conjunction with Mars, that there is lots of video, there is lots of, stuff all over social media or things that are going to be in the media or in the news that's about foreign conflict. Also, Pisces can be things linked to hospitals, things that are linked to prisons, and anything that deals with mass migration or immigration. So we'll be kind of keeping an eye on that. I do think that with Mercury retrograde, it is going to be about revealing some of the information that's kind of connected to this. And Pisces is more discreet. So likely this will be things that are happening in the middle of the night. We wake up, we see the news, we see social media showing us Mars things, conflict, combat, or anything that is kind of secretive in nature. So I think it's going to be quiet, but then as we're getting into April, it's going to get rather loud. I'm also watching for military deployment that's going to be on the water, so Navy deployment, anything that's kind of connecting to coastal cities, anything that's going to be connected to where Mars's military are potentially stationed. And I'm looking at Jupiter retrograde. I think a lot of like the military actions and mobilization that's kind of going on is really to accumulate more land. It's going to be able to kind of pick up property, real estate, rebuild. So there's going to be a lot of big money interest in some of these locations because they're hoping to kind of expand borders or potentially even their countries. So we won't see it right now, but it definitely will, I think, be something that's going to play out in the months ahead after this period. Now, when we look at the Mars transit, I really want to focus on some of the more important aspects that we're going to be seeing as Mars goes through this sign. From March the 2nd to April the 9th, Mars will be in Pisces. So these are the dates that you guys are going to want to watch. On the 2nd, that's when Mars is going to make its ingress. So that means that it's going to leave Aquarius, where it has been rather obnoxious, I think, for like the last week or so with some of the squares to Uranus. And there's been a lot of kind of wild cards, obviously energy issues, stuff that's connected to conflict with friends, disapproval of things that are going on financially. There's been a lot of financial stuff that's kind of gone on this week. If you guys have been watching the news and stuff that's been happening about, I think it was, can't remember the name of the company, but it was something Jane. Anyway, talking about like potential insider trading and manipulating crypto markets and things that are being kind of sold off. That's like suppressing the price. Very much the Mars-Uranus square. And so I think that's the shock and surprise of people kind of waking up to market manipulation. Nothing new, but I think it's kind of made quite a ruckus online with Mars going through Aquarius. But now it's going to dip into Pisces on the 2nd. So energy levels will shift pretty dramatically. We're going to see this really early in the week. This is where our action now becomes more focused on Pisces topics. So being compassionate, intuitive, and really spiritually oriented. Motivation will align more with service and creativity or anything that's kind of connected to flow rather than conquest. So notice for that vibe shift that's going to be coming in on the 2nd. And then things are going to be pretty quiet for a couple of days. We're not going to see too much going on until closer to March the 13th. And this is when we're going to begin to see Mars coming into conjunction with the North Node in Pisces. Now, if you guys have a good astrological eye, you'll notice that Mars is not just conjunct the North Node. This is the same degree which Mercury entered into shadow, pre-shadow. So Mercury's retrograding in Pisces throughout March, and it's going to station direct at 8 degrees. So that 8 degrees is very important. I've seen the Mercury transit more or less be about where there was a slow releasing of information, right? Mercury can be information, data, analysis regarding health, jobs, habits. Certainly we're seeing mass layoffs that are happening across the board with a lot of companies. And a lot of it, I think, is because of some of the developments that are going on in tech. I also think that this can represent some of the stuff that they've been talking about the global economy, what's going on with trade, what's going on with businesses, particularly Pisces areas. So it can be international trade, it can be pharmaceuticals, things that are connected to film kind of industries. One interesting thing that I saw, and I talked about this like a month ago, I was like, watch what happens with some of these major film studios. And I think Netflix pulled out of buying Warner Brothers, if I'm correct. And so now it looks like since they've pulled out of that, potentially there's going to be another major studio that's going to be, buying this other movie studio. Great representation of the Mercury retrograde and then the conjunction with Mars. So there may still be more negotiations with other studios or mergers with other studios, kind of keeping an eye on that as well. Now, when Mars comes into conjunction with the North Node, we only see this roughly about every 2 years because of Mars' cycle, but we only see this transit every 18 or 19 years. So this is really going to be influencing, I think the collective in a very big way. We know that 8s are a Scorpio degree, so it does deal with secrets, sometimes conspiracies, investigations, anything that deals with death or regeneration or taxes, things that are connected to money crimes, Plutonian stuff. And Mars conjunct the North Node is a very strong energy because the North Node is going to make everything feel bigger because it's being ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter is now direct on the 13th. And also Mars means we want more. So you're going to see more Pisces energy, more compassion, more surge for service, more surge for people going to church, spiritual practices. But you can also see people who are more passive aggressive, people who are acting a little bit more emotionally, people who are acting a little crazed. And when this conjunction happens, I looked at the Sabian symbol, so it's the jockey symbol of a jockey trying to kind of win at the game of life. I think it's really speaking to, with that Mars conjunction, intense mobilization of energy and skill for the pursuit of success. And Mars can sometimes be a little cutthroat, so it's like, I'll do whatever I have to do to win. And when it's in Pisces, it's going to represent those things that are actually working against us. And here is the major headline. It's influenced by Saturn and Neptune in Aries, which means where do we need to get out of our own way? Where are we not seeing where sometimes how we are kind of projecting ourselves or how we're presenting ourselves? Where do we lack that sense of self-awareness? Where are we confused about the direction forward? Where there's some things that are kind of bubbling up inside of us that are now starting to kind of break through the surface? And how does that impact everybody collectively if we're functioning in that manner? So with Mars conjunct the North Node, it is like kind of turning the karmic ignition on. And it can be positive because our drive can align very powerfully with our soul's evolutionary path. Now, this is why I'm telling you, a lot of astrologers are going to go, we're going to war, right? Mars North Node is pretty notorious for the war drums. But I also feel like you're going to see some people who are going to be very strongly saying, we don't want war. Mars is influencing Saturn and Neptune, or there's a lot of confusion as to whether or not we should be actually at war with other countries. Is there some hidden influence that's driving this? Is there some religious or kind of cultural divide that's driving this? And are some of these things intentionally being kind of falsely represented or manipulated to get everybody on board with this? It's going to be interesting to see. I think with the conjunction that's going to be happening, really what it's saying is it's demanding courageous action towards surrender, right? Pisces can be peace. And it's also about compassion and spiritual growth. And so some of us are going to feel this very strong pull to act on intuitive kind of longings, maybe to dissolve some ego barriers and pursue healing and potentially even some creative destinies. Like I said, Mars in Pisces is that spiritual warrior. So this is that spiritual warrior moment where assertiveness seeks higher purpose as well as destiny. Now we are going to see the Mercury retrograde conjunct Mars. So likely something is heating up on the 13th, and then on the 15th, Mercury comes into conjunction with Mars, and that's going to be happening around 10 degrees, and that's a government degree. So that's going to be potentially about exposés and information coming out, or hearing documents or transcripts that are released, or people covering groundbreaking kind of stories on the front lines of potential war or conflict. Mercury's the media, Mercury's retrograde, and it's in a sign it doesn't do well in. So there's going to be a lot of pumping false narratives that are potentially connected to war or conflict, to intentionally rile people up, get people angry, make them want to go along with whatever is happening, make them feel very enraged. So just be mindful of that and what you're consuming. This is also going to be about some swift actions that are changing with media, as we're seeing big major media companies that are changing hands now. So that's happening kind of behind the scenes, and how that's impacting the narrative of what they're kind of telling their audience. Now, obviously, Mercury is the mind, so it is backtracking and kind of doing some feeling out of some stuff, and then Mars wants to move forward. So at that 10 degrees, it can mean that this is something that we have been told for a very long time about history, about previous wars, previous conflicts. I also think that this is prepped and primed for some people to have some real issues with their immune system. So you guys need to keep that in mind. Make sure you're drinking high quality water, make sure you're getting your rest, make sure that you're doing everything that you can do to manage stress and get excellent sleep. Because it can be an indicator with Mercury Mars that there is potential for there to be some people who are having some illness and falling victim to fevers, sweats, even anything that's connected to digestional issues because of Mercury's tie to the South Node, and people who are more prone to having just a lot of emotional exhaustion and issues with their sleep. Now, when this conjunction happens, it's going to be around 10 degrees. So the Sabian symbol for that is men traveling a narrow path seeking illumination. So the symbol is really dedication to self-improvement. This is also like the quest for enlightenment and staying committed to the spiritual path despite some of the challenges. And so this is where we have to get our mind on board with, okay, you know, spirit's telling me something, my higher self's telling me something, there's something I need to give up, I need to quit, there's something that I need to kind of release. And writing things down and burning it can help. Or sometimes some of you guys are just going to feel like it's angry tears, or it's things that are coming up in dreams that are kind of making you realize that you didn't really get closure on something. And definitely it can be karmic, it can be past life related as well. So a lot of you guys who are into past life regression, or if you're doing any like shamanic work, this can be a time where you're really snip some of the karmic strings and cords and things that are connected to past lives or even past relationships and people that you feel like are holding you back. Because this is going to be that moment on the 15th where you're like, this thing's holding me back. It's time for me to be able to kind of make the change. As planets are kind of moving into Aries later in March, going into April, that's when you're going to see the physical manifestations of some of the clearing that you're actually doing now. And for some people, you know, it's manifesting as having, you know, like I said, nightmares. For others, it's about going back into therapy and realizing there's trauma and other things they need to clear. For other people, I'm seeing it's just that they're realizing that they've been too passive, or that they haven't been willing to kind of stand up for themselves, or they haven't been willing to, you know, have the hard kind of conversations. Certainly Mercury and Mars has this energy of conflict and, you know, harsh words and kind of sharp tongues. So when you see Mercury, which is about mental energy, fusing with Mars, which is about drive in Pisces, thoughts become action-oriented, but also intuitive and compassionate. So yes, words can be very sharp, so watch what you're saying, but they can also be very inspiring, they can be very poetic, and debates may turn kind of passive-aggressive or scattered if we're not watching this energy. So it's great for creative expression, spiritual insights, as well as you know, real instinctive decisions that are kind of being downloaded, you know, in our everyday life. So make sure you're taking some time to review stuff, think things through before you make any big decisions. Watch for unclear communication or people who are just acting very emotionally kind of impulsive. On to the good stuff. Probably one of the best transits that we're going to see with Mars in Pisces is around the 21st. And this is going to be when Mars is starting to come into a trine with Jupiter in Cancer, and Mars is forming that trine at about 15 degrees. That is a Gemini degree, so it's going to be dealing with communication, it's dealing with writing, it's dealing with traveling. And when it trines Jupiter, it's going to make the energy feel bigger, and Jupiter is obviously the dispositor or the ruler of Mars. So this is my favorite aspect throughout the next couple of weeks. We know that trines are the energy of Jupiter, so it's about harmonious expansion. Even though it's in water signs, we can actually get a lot of things done. And I really feel like this is where ambition is meeting optimism, and it's going to promote and bring a lot more joy, a lot more expansion, knowledge, you know, even faith. And we're going to see that this allows us to now have a lot more enthusiasm. It's also about good judgment and leadership and success in compassionate or nurturing pursuits. So you'll find that confidence is really starting to surge on the 21st, and actions can feel blessed and expansive. So this is excellent for creative projects, healing work, you know, family or community efforts. And then the last aspect that we're going to see before Mars changes signs is Mars will come into a sextile on the 8th of April with Uranus and Taurus. And this is interesting because it's going to be right at 29 degrees. So Mars will sit at 29 degrees of Pisces. It's sextiling Uranus at 29 degrees of Taurus. It's a subtle energy, but it's a push to finally break free or transform or shake out all of our kind of outdated values, resources, and potentially some big changes with the banks. So this is going to give us a kind of like electric breakthrough. And 29 degrees means we have to kind of get this right. We have to release something and let it go. I do think that there can be some restlessness that can kind of come up that can lead us to make big changes and really make some kind of like innovative decisions and take action. We'll see sudden opportunities for freedom through change, or maybe unconventional kind of moves that start to arise here. And it's great for kind of breaking routines, trying new things, and also infusing creativity, I think, with a lot more originality. And the one thing you want to watch for with like Mars-Uranus aspects is that we can be a little bit more impulsive, okay? So be mindful of that there can be some sudden changes. Nothing's really going on with Jupiter, although Mercury and Jupiter are still slightly in a trine. And then Venus is very much influencing what's going on with Uranus, and Venus is in Taurus. So I do think we're going to see some pretty significant changes going on with people financially, and also like with just the economy and the markets. Venus will be having come out of a square with Pluto. And so those of you guys who are kind of waiting to see some big changes in crypto, that may potentially be when we start to see some things that are going to be happening as we're getting into mid-April. So the predictions that I have for you guys for these events in a nutshell. So let's go back to March the 1st. The predictions that I have for you guys are going to depend pretty much based off of where Pisces is in your chart. And I'll take you guys through the 12 rising signs, and I'll talk about what I anticipate is going to be happening for you over the next couple of weeks. But yeah, collective compassion initiatives that are gaining traction, action revolving around water or anything kind of connected to even storms. We have to watch still for like flooding and issues with like water events with these transits. I also think that this is going to be about really looking at where we can find peaceful approaches to finally kind of cutting ties with things and letting things go. Definitely a creative boost when it comes to film and design and music, even writing. And we're going to find that communities that need help, that need support, those who are underprivileged, people who potentially are homeless or they're in some type of prison system or something like that, there may be some initiative to kind of help some of these people. And even though I do think global tensions are definitely going to rise, I think that we have the potential through the Mars transit and also the Mercury retrograde to soften some of that, renegotiate, and try to diffuse any issues that can be really parading us in the direction of war. Watch for deception though. Deception and passive aggression can definitely rise. And it's things that are kind of lingering behind the scenes that we just don't realize are kind of bothering us. And then they start to become like bigger problems. So flushing that out, staying hydrated, being mindful of our emotions are really important throughout the entire transit. I'll cover some of the other transits week by week as we kind of get closer. But that's your guys' snapshot of what to expect with Mars and Pisces. So let's get into the week ahead. This is going to be for March the 1st through the 8th, 2026. If you guys are watching in the morning on Sunday, happy Sunday to you guys, whether you're watching on YouTube or if you guys are watching on Spotify. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate you guys being a part of the Sunday crew and for letting me come and spend Sunday with you. As we wake up in the morning, the moon is in the sign of Leo. So you guys are going to be seeing with the moon moving through this sign, really the only kind of big aspects that it's going to be making is a trine to Chiron in Aries. So it's trying to focus on healing something, healing identity wounds, healing the self, and doing that through creativity, doing that through play, having fun, being romantic, maybe even a little bit more spontaneous as the night goes on, because that moon is going to come into a square with Uranus. Nothing's really happening with the sun, which is the ruler of the moon. It's still moving through Pisces, so it's pretty quiet, but we're feeling like at the final kicks of the Mars-Uranus square. So, this last Thursday, really through today, we're feeling the effects of that kind of nervous tension and maybe some breakdowns or kind of cutting off or severing or issues with tech and also social connections. What you want to watch, though, that's going to be kind of setting up, so you're going to start to see down the road that the moon will trine Chiron, so that's going to be in the early evening hours. And then we're going to see overnight, kind of going in tomorrow morning, the moon is going to be coming into a square with Uranus, okay? But it looks like Monday, when we start to see the moon oppose Mars and square Uranus, is when it's really going to start to kind of kick in. This is a day that I feel like as long as you guys are being creative, you're having fun, you're having some playtime, I think it's going to be a great day. I also am looking at Venus. Venus is also kind of starting to come into a semi-sextile with Chiron. So that can be like a soft energy that we're feeling where there are some subtle opportunities for relationship healing or maybe even with self-worth. It's really about minor adjustments to some of our emotional wounds. So getting out there, playing, collaborating, expressing yourself, I think is the key to really kind of tapping into this. All right, daily vibe is just like we're feeling ourselves, like with the moon in Leo. This is about having confidence. Maybe you're going out and you're being seen, you're wearing something that makes you feel a little bit more powerful. Do something on Sunday just for you, right? And then by the evening, as we're starting to see the moon that's coming into a trine with Chiron and it's starting to build overnight to the square with Uranus, slow down, take a breath and get ready for Monday, okay? So on Monday, as we continue to move forward, we are going to be seeing some pretty pretty big energies here. So it's going to be kind of perfecting overnight, where it's in opposition to Mars and square to Uranus. So my guess is if there's anything super dynamic going on in terms of world conflict, we're going to be hearing about this on Monday morning, because Uranus is things that kind of go boom. Mars does talk about passion and intensity, and we're seeing all these planets kind of syncing up to the late degrees, forming a T-square very, very early in the morning. And then by the time most of us are kind of waking up in the morning, the moon is then shifting into Virgo. So if you're an early riser, watch for the moon in Leo square Uranus in opposition to Mars. Don't be running around, 4, 5, 6 a.m. Central Time doing anything too crazy or anything that involves speed. And then we watch that moon that's going to go into Virgo, and we are feeling the buildup coming into what will be the lunar eclipse in Virgo. What will happen is Mars is now starting to, get to that critical degree. It will be moving into Pisces. So you're going to be seeing that in the morning hours on Monday. And the moon and Mars are still in opposition to each other. So there's a little bit of tension and friction. And they're picking up the energies of the nodes. So like the moon south node is that emotional clearing out. The Mars north node is going to be about kind of feeling instinctually like you need to kind of make an action, or you need to take a chance, or you need to go after something. And let's see, what else is happening? That's pretty much it. So Mars will enter Pisces in the morning. That's the big shift. So that's where we see that compassionate drive that's going to kick in. And also the moon's going to be going through Virgo. So it's going to be about this kind of drive towards service and changes that are kind of happening with our habits, changes that are kind of happening to really all of the Virgo eclipse vibe stuff that we're releasing. And I've seen it for a lot of people as, changes with their jobs, and whether their job schedule is changing, or, they're being let go, or they're having to, go back to work, or they're searching for work. That's definitely coming up all day on, really Monday the 2nd into the 3rd. What you guys are going to find is that if we can focus on Mercury, right? Because now Mercury is kind of the ruler of this Virgo moon. Mercury is retrograde in Pisces, which means it's time to rest. It's time to reflect, or we don't have all of the answers yet, or we don't exactly know what's next. We're waiting for like the next big thing. Take some time to just kind of rest and recuperate if you can on Monday. I think the morning to me, especially early in the morning, feels very intense. And with that moon in opposition to Mars, you're going to see this is about friction. This is about agitation. So people might be a little agitated in the morning. You're noticing people are kind of in a mood when you're, kind of getting to work and that stuff. And as the moon is shifting into Virgo, it's really having us focus on, okay, how can we get practical? And with Mercury retrograde in Pisces, we can't really get practical yet. Motivation is going more in the direction of service and creativity and empathy rather than conquest. And Mars is in Pisces, Mercury's retrograde there. And that's going to be really kind of coloring this entire week, where things just feel like they don't make sense. So the daily vibe for Monday is things do feel a little intense. I think that we're also going to be noticing that it's a day where, we're in a completely different headspace by the time that we get to the end of Monday. The energy does start to soften, and you're going to see that pretty much after the moon starts coming out of an opposition with Mars. So by the late morning. And then the moon is going to come into conjunction with the south node, and that's going to be happening in the PM hours right around here, 9, 10 o'clock Central Time. And then we're building into what's going to be the full moon lunar eclipse. So to navigate Monday, my advice would be don't make any major decisions in the morning, right? Write it out, wait for the dust to kind of settle. If you need to journal, if you need to ground yourself, if you need to get some sleep, do that. Because Mars in Pisces is really asking you, what do I actually want to do? Not what do I need to do or what should I do? So it's like, what do I actually want to do? And for a lot of people, they're going to go, I don't know yet, or I feel like I just need to take a breather. So just kind of regroup. And then this is going to be taking us into Tuesday, the 3rd. And what you'll notice is just a lot of emotional clearing on Monday night. And then as we're getting into the very early morning hours on Tuesday, this is when we're going to have the full moon lunar eclipse, and that's going to be in Virgo, so at 12 degrees. So if you have anything 10 to 14 degrees of Virgo, very significant for you. You're having a closing eclipse that's tied to last September's eclipse that was at 29 degrees of Virgo, and now it's been 6 months of trying to figure out what are we kind of pulling away, what is being removed from our lives, what don't we know, what don't we see. And obviously that was because it was in opposition to Saturn and Neptune last September. What do you guys need to know about an eclipse? Well, they're kind of like wild cards, right? So think about what intentions you set last year in the fall. What were your goals? What was this critical thing you had to do? Because that eclipse was at 29 degrees, so it represented like a critical turning point. Now you're going to see that kind of come to full culmination. Now, when eclipses happen, it also means that something's being eclipsed out of our life. So the general theme, I think, of this eclipse is, yes, some of us are having job changes, some of us are having schedule changes, some of us are seeing major shifts in regards to our habits. And a lot of that is because we're kind of reflecting on a soul level, what needs to go, what needs to be kind of kicked to the curb. So when you see this lunar eclipse come in, this is obviously the headline event. You don't have to wait for Tuesday to feel the eclipse. I've been feeling the eclipse for like the last week. I can tell that there's some stuff that's really kind of getting ready to get shaken out. And it's really this powerful culmination. It's like this major release point that is very critical because it started with a 29 degree and it's happening at a 12. So it's mirroring Mercury's retrograde in, Pisces, which is the 12th sign of the Zodiac, which has been kind of unknown or we're not able to see clearly. It's especially tied to drugs and alcohol and mental health stuff. And then not only that, but you're seeing Mercury that's going to continue to retrograde and it's going to go over this degree. So the Mercury retrograde will further kind of bring up some of the themes of this particular eclipse. So think where you can get practical with your health and your habits, where there is a tendency maybe to want to take on too much work or want to fix things for other people. And really the South Node eclipse is saying like, it's time to let go of these old patterns where we're too hard on ourselves, too critical. Maybe we're not asking the right questions. Maybe we're not checking in with like our spirit. We'll also see that Mars is going to be starting to come into a bit of like a semi-sextile with Neptune because it's starting to kind of get up to 1 degree. This is also subtle. This basically means that it's kind of blending action with dreams and illusion, and intuition is going to be guiding some of our energy. Just watch for feeling kind of low energy, feeling like we have a lot less motivation. And Tuesday is the day where you're going to see a lot of things kind of peak emotionally, especially first thing in the morning. And things are finally coming to completion. I also think this is about secrets being revealed and emotions kind of flood. So with this eclipse, we have really been building towards this since last fall. And like I said, it's the third Virgo eclipse that we've seen in the cycle of these eclipses. So you have to ask yourself, what's waiting to be released and is now a good time to do it? To navigate your energy, I think on Tuesday, this is about grounding. So Virgo is an earth sign, getting some time outside, maybe doing some of your kind of spiritual upkeep and clearing or cleansing, wearing your crystals, doing something that is going to connect you with nature and get you some peace and relaxation would be a really, really good idea with Mercury in Pisces. This is also a time to really let things go. Let the chips fall where they may. And if you need to, move your body, make sure you stay hydrated, be gentle with yourself. Especially I'm seeing a lot of people who are like getting colds and flus. They're having lots of allergies going on. They're having digestional issues. That's very Virgo. And this is probably a good time during a eclipse to just be mindful of what you're consuming, what you're eating, what you're drinking, what you're around, what you're watching, because everything is kind of being flushed out. And obviously there can be some big emotions here. So if we go through the day, the eclipse is first thing in the morning, but we're really going to be feeling the effects of it clear until the moon goes into Libra. So even though it's going to be over with by the time most people are getting up, something that will happen later in the afternoon going into the evening is that the moon is going to make an opposition to Mercury. So this basically means that we're trying to be busy, be working, getting things done, but our mind is elsewhere. And there is some kind of sense of not seeing eye to eye between how we feel and also what we think or what we have to say. So communication is not ideal. I've said this before and I'll say this again. Eclipses are not times to have big launches. It's not times to release big things. Usually full moons can be okay for that, but this one is just riddled with a lot of issues. So you guys just want to be mindful that communication, travel, and anything that involves like learning or having exchanges that's about talking about our job or our feelings just aren't going to go right. So we're going to watch the moon continue to keep moving through Virgo, and it's not going to make really any other aspects. And now this is going to take us into the 4th, which is going to be Wednesday. And Wednesday, very early in the morning, we're going to see the moon in Virgo come into a trine with Uranus and Taurus. So now we can kind of stabilize, adjust, shift our resources, our values, anything when it comes to physicality, food, even money. And the moon is also going to make an opposition to Venus. So there is like a sense of going, okay, this is now the change in the relationship or the job or the finances, and something that we're like longing for. Roll with the punches. Once that moon gets into Libra, it's going to be a bit of a different vibe. And that's going to be here. And once the moon gets into Libra in the early afternoon, now we're going to be putting more of an emphasis on relationships, things that are connecting to partnerships, connecting with others. And obviously, you know, when we see the moon leave Virgo, then we're going to start to kind of feel the reprieve after all of that fallout that's been kind of building the last couple of days with the incoming eclipse. Now, we're not out of the woods yet. We're going to see the moon now is getting highlighted by Venus. Venus is in an exact sextile early in the day to Uranus, which can mean there can be some sudden changes in relationships, some major market fluctuations, some major fallouts that can kind of happen. But at least Venus is exalted in Pisces, so it does mean that maybe we're more willing to let things go. We're more willing to forgive. We're more willing to kind of put our issues aside, make changes, and kind of support people and kind of lean into relationships. That moon is also going to start building into a trine with Pluto. So you're going to see better socializing, you know, relationship type dynamics, powerful kind of connections with other people happening on Wednesday evening. And this is really strong for connecting with friends. So if you have to send out invitations, if you're wanting to do something social, Wednesday night is definitely a decent time to do that, especially while Venus is still in Pisces. We have some nice kind of like relatable aspects. Now, what you want to watch for, I think, is just with that Venus-Uranus sextile midday, this is either liberating, it's exciting. We can see that there can be some sparks in love, money, or creativity. But we can also see that there can be some sudden fluctuations financially, sudden attractions, maybe new innovative ideas and breakthroughs in relationships. It's a good surprise aspect. So I'm curious to kind of see what manifests with that. And then we're also going to be seeing that now Mercury is coming into a semi-sextile here with some other, no, not a semi-sextile, excuse me. It's coming into trine. You're starting to feel the trine to Jupiter. Not a big aspect. We got to get Venus, not Venus, we got to get the moon in Libra out of an opposition with Saturn and Neptune. So it looks like in the evening, first the moon's going to oppose Neptune. Yeah, first the moon's going to oppose Neptune around 3. And then it's going to oppose Saturn around 5. And then it's going to start coming into a trine with Pluto, and that's going to be in the evening hours. So not seeing eye to eye with other people, having some relational issues or dynamics. I think the Venus-Uranus aspect, once again, softens that, but it's a better day than what we had with the eclipse on the 3rd. So after, you know, yesterday's kind of intensity, it does bring a bit of relief. With that Venus sextile Uranus transit, if you want to make a change in a relationship or with your resources, or you have some sudden insights about those things, pay attention. Something unexpected might kind of pop up on this day. I would say on the 4th, say yes to unexpected kind of invitations, maybe connect with someone who makes you feel seen. And this is also about creating and kind of collaborating with other people. So then this is going to take us into what will be the 5th, which is Thursday. And the moon's still going through Libra. You're not really seeing too much happening there. It's not trining anything, so there's no real big aspects that are happening on the 5th. But the moon will square Jupiter in Cancer. Okay, so that is going to be some big emotions, big words, and that's going to be happening in the PM hours on Thursday the 5th. And the moon is being influenced by Jupiter too, by the way. So there is like a sense of how we communicate with home, family, relatives, or the past, and how things are changing or kind of being brought up through relational dynamics. Venus hits 29 degrees this day, so it does mean that there is some kind of critical turning point that's happening with our emotions and our relationships. I think that this is still a pretty decent day, especially considering that we're going to see the sun trining Jupiter, which we only get twice a year. And this is still happening in water signs, so it can mean that there is a big emotional release that happens on the 5th of March. This is a good transit though. It's uplifting, there's flow, there's confidence, there's generosity, there can be luck and opportunities kind of expand. So it's excellent for visibility, maybe for teaching, traveling, or potentially even some kind of positive outreach. I like this day. I think that it brings a lot of, good vibes and a lot of optimism. And then we're going to see Venus is getting ready to leave Pisces. So let's look at that. That may not happen until overnight into the next day. So this is the last day of Venus in Pisces. It is starting to pick up the energy of the conjunction to Saturn and Neptune. So it is possible that there is like a lot of big changes that are on the horizon for individuals when it comes to what they value, what they love, what it is that they want. So to navigate Thursday the 5th, I would say be generous, right? Be generous with your time, be generous with your money, be generous with your heart. This is a blessing that can kind of be in disguise, or something good that's kind of coming that can be beneficial for your spirit and potentially even for your home. And I hope you guys like the Sun trine Jupiter, but some of the other aspects that are kind of lingering post the eclipse can be a little tricky, as is the moon, you know, which is quincunx and in conjunct Pisces. And like Libra wants to relate and connect with other people, and Pisces is like, I'm not sure, I don't know if this is what I want to do. There can be some sense of there being some isolating or kind of hiding out from asking for help or connecting and collaborating with other people. This is then going to take us into Friday, which will be the 6th. And on Friday, we wake up and the moon is still in Libra, and we see Venus moves into Aries, guys. Okay, so this is important because this is the first planet that has moved into Aries since February 17th, when we saw the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. When the sun hits that, when Mercury hits that, when Mars hits that, we're going to see reactivations of that kind of conjunction. I think it's a big deal. I think we'll see the same things during the equinox and also the solstices this year. But on the 6th, really what we're looking at is that Venus is going to be entering into Aries. And Aries is brand new. It's the first sign of the zodiac, cardinal fire. It's about self-love, passion, desire, individual needs, and values. So when the moon goes through Libra, it's picking up that energy of Venus reactivating that Saturn-Neptune conjunction. 0 degrees of Aries is the cardinal, one of the cardinal points. So this is where we see big world events that can sometimes happen. And if you notice, now the moon is starting to come into an opposition with Chiron. So it is possible that, you know, Friday the 6th is riddled with some relational issues, or some people having to start from scratch, start over, hit reset in their relationships, be more focused on their needs, be more focused on their values. And that's picking up the energy of Mars. So Mars being in Pisces, a lot of people are kind of like in their head. Mars, Mercury retrograde in Pisces, being like, why am I so isolated? Or what's wrong with me? Or like, why am I alone? And they're not recognizing or realizing that there are some things that are still getting flushed out. There's almost like a delay happening with the Mercury retrograde, the Mars transit, that we won't really start to see the fresh new beginnings until we're getting into April. Now, Venus will enter into Aries very early in the morning. So if you're ruled by Venus, if you happen to be a Taurus or a Libra rising, there's going to be a big vibe shift here for you. And also, I would say for my Aries and Aries risings, Venus is coming through your sign, so it's like blessing you guys. And I'm going to do a video on it later this week, and we'll talk about what that means. But I think something very significant is going to be happening as this starts to kind of take place in a very, very big way. I think this is where the reset is starting to happen, either for relationships or for finances. The positive is that this is where love and values can shift to something that's more bold, independent, it's more passionate, and desire becomes kind of direct, and it's about initiating. No more waiting around, okay? So stay tuned for that Venus in Aries video, but watch maybe for the creative spark that can come in from this. Watch for, you know, the potential to find someone or something new. To navigate this, it would be a good idea to be working on creative projects, right? Venus is about art, it's about beauty, it's about music, and Venus is now starting to nuzzle up next to Neptune. So this is also my fair warning. As of the 6th, really until about the 9th, right? Venus is going to hit that 0 degree point. She's going to hit Neptune, where she can have the rose-colored glasses. She's then going to hit Saturn, which can represent where, you know, there could be some tough lessons in love, relationships, or money. Very, very, very unusual conjunctions that we're seeing right now, okay? So this tells me that people need to really see clearly when it comes to what they're buying, what they're consuming. They really should not be making any knee-jerk reactions when it comes to purchases, relationships, because we may not be seeing things so clearly. You get what I'm saying? And we're going to be influenced and be feeling more isolated, alone, or confused in relationships, because there is a lot of that is just kind of swirling around with Mars and Pisces, kind of like in the collective. Try to take time, I would say, to focus on things from really the 6th forward, where you can better yourself, you can work on your self-love, you can be healing yourself, and don't just assume that anything that looks sparkly is necessarily going to stick, because there's now some very karmic things that are going to start happening for individuals and relationships. The moon in opposition to Chiron point blank is just kind of like, okay, you know, some people are going to want to relate and other people are going to go, I just don't know, I just don't feel well, or I just don't feel like it's the right time. And we can't be, you know, really 100% in relationships until we're doing some of that work on ourselves. So try to do something new is what I would say, but just be mindful of the relationships and like the financial stuff. Now you're going to see the moon continue to go through Libra. It's going to pick up the opposition to Chiron, and that's going to be right around late morning, midday at 24 degrees. And then we are going to see the moon go into Scorpio, and that will be in the PM hours. And around the same time, late at night on the 6th, we're also starting to see the Mercury Cazimi coming in. So it looks like the Cazimi is going to be happening like overnight, the 6th into the 7th. All right, I'm probably going to do a video about that too. But the Mercury Cazimi is the halfway point through the Mercury retrograde. And this is going to represent that turning point where there is an epiphany, there's a realization. Now we're able to kind of clear our mind. We're able to kind of realize what the purpose is of the Mercury retrograde. There can be some jaw-dropping or some shocking kind of information or news that's potentially kind of coming up. This one's a bit potent because Mercury does rule the South Node. So this is going to signify a lot of people who are going to be, you know, finding out something about their health, finding out something about their job, and they're going to have to kind of make sense for what cycles are kind of closing and completing. Now that Mercury retrograde is going to continue for a couple of weeks. The moon's going to be moving through Scorpio, and in the overnight hours, it'll come into a square with Pluto. So that really talks about some like heated tension, especially when it comes to secrets, passions, desires, you know, things that can be more negative emotions that are kind of coming up. And as we get into Saturday, let's look at what's happening here. So it looks like the moon will square Pluto very early Saturday morning. So if you're an early riser, watch out for the moon square Pluto drama, emotional purging, and kind of toxic habits. And also you're going to see the Cazimi. So something else seems to be getting kicked up on Saturday the 7th, very early, moon square Pluto, Mercury Cazimi. If you happen to be a Mercury ruled chart, so like Gemini or Virgo, or if you happen to be a Leo sun or a Pisces sun, watch for that. This is at a 16, so it's a Cancer degree, so it's about emotions and clearing something about emotions, but it could be some changes with mothers, our homes, our families, rearranging our bedrooms, rearranging our closets, potentially changes in regards to foreign leadership. And we can be hearing about really prominent people who are going to jail or who are being arrested. That's very much like a Pisces thing. All right, so this is the day that we're going to see not only the Cazimi, but we're going to see Venus conjuncting Neptune. And like I have a bit mixed feelings on this. I would say that with the Sun conjunct Mercury, mental clarity will peak. So we can start to finally make sense of what's been kind of confused. And it is better for communication and decisions and maybe expressing them with more confidence because our thoughts start to kind of align with our identities. However, in the background, we're going to be seeing that moon trining Mars is also saying instinctively we need to be like, hey, we need to have this conversation, or we need to check in with somebody, or we need to make sure is everything okay. Great day for healing, great day for working through something in therapy, great day for kind of releasing and letting stuff go. And then we've got Venus that's going to be meeting with Neptune. At 1 degree, it's about where we sometimes are willing to sacrifice ourselves for relationships. Maybe it means we don't see ourselves so clearly. Maybe it means that we need to be practicing some kind of radical self-love, right? And I also think that it's a little different because it's not just Venus conjunct Neptune. Venus is also coming into conjunction with Saturn. So my advice with the Cazimi, with the Venus-Neptune conjunction, which is playing off of Mars, is on Saturday, get yourself in some water. Soak, go swimming, be by a lake, take a bath, take a hot shower, go to the spa, do something like that where you can just really unwind and you can let stuff out. Know that this is going to be a day where it's very deep with the Scorpio moon. It's also very spiritually charged. We're getting our mental clarity back. I think that we might be feeling like we're finally connecting to our purpose or a bigger picture, and we can be very creative, like on a soul level. We kind of get that message that's like, this has to go. So if you can meditate, journal, maybe have some deep conversations, this is definitely not a surface level day by any means. And you're really just going to feel that it's just very emotionally charged with that moon that's coming into a trine with Mars, and then also a trine with the North Node. And that's going to be happening right around the afternoon hours. Venus will pass Neptune then by the afternoon, and then she's kind of trapped between Neptune and Saturn. And this is not a great place for Venus to be, because she is feeling like she's kind of lost or alone. And also she's feeling like she's hitting some kind of border or some kind of boundary. And when Venus and Saturn conjunct, it's going to be at a 2, which means we are going to see issues with people being able to get money from banks. We are going to see probably issues with ATMs. We're going to see failures of some kind, mercurial failures, where there is problems with apps, there's issues with tech, there's problems with electricity, and also people being able to get resources or food. So you will probably see some of these things that are going to happen. Look at this. There's mutual reception here between Mars and Neptune now too. So we've got Neptune in a Martian sign, Mars in a Neptunian sign. And I do think that this can be suggesting that we're going to see some big issues with ships and trade, international trade routes, probably some spikes that deal with gas or oil, because that's very much kind of like Neptune's territory. And potentially people feeling like, oh my gosh, we're starting to see the prices of certain things that are starting to spike, and like now certain things are harder to come by. All right, so we're going to watch that moon continue to move through Scorpio. It will not really do too much else for the rest of the day. And then that's going to be taking us in basically to the 8th. So let's get to Sunday. It does look like in the very early morning hours on the 8th, the moon is going to trine Jupiter. So that's emotional, compassionate, intuitive. We have a grand water trine on Sunday the 8th. So we're feeling very tapped in. There is a huge surge of energy that's very healing, but it's very much about releasing and letting go. And then we see Venus coming into conjunction with Saturn. Venus-Saturn can represent like karmic relationship matters, you know, older female relatives in our life, things that are connected to our ancestors, things that are also kind of connected to just karmic tests in relationships. And I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but since Saturn and Neptune have been in Aries, now like the lessons come fast. It's not like Pisces where it was kind of back and forth and confusing. Now things are like full steam ahead. Positive, I think, that we're going to see on Sunday is this grand water trine. And we're also going to see that Mars is now starting to get closer and closer to the North Node. So it's telling us what we absolutely must kind of release and let go of. But the daily vibe for me feels a little iffy. I think that even in spite of like the grand water trines, that Venus coming into conjunction with Saturn now feels like there's lots of tests in love and relationships. There's tests when it comes to money. We're still playing off of the Venus-Neptune conjunction. So there's still this rose-colored glasses type of vibes that are also kind of going on. And it's a real day. After the dreamy kind of Venus-Neptune stuff where we got suckered into buying something or convinced that something was real or convinced that somebody, you know, was having good intentions, then Venus hits Saturn and it's like, oh, Pisces is notorious, and the 12th house energy is notorious for losses. So there could be some really massive losses because people decide to just get on the bandwagon and they're like, oh, I'm going to be buying this stock, or I'm going to be selling this thing, or I'm going to be investing in that thing. And people can be really feeling the karmic effects of, oh, I thought that it was going to do this and it's going to do that. So to me, this is reading like there could be like a rug pull moment. And obviously it's a Sunday, but just be mindful that there could be some really prominent world events that are going on over the weekend, and like banks aren't going to be open on Sunday. And then people are going to be like, oh my God, what is this going to mean for the market tomorrow? You know? And it's happening literally over the weekend. So unless you're involved in crypto, you're gonna have to wait and see what happens on Monday. But after that dreamy Venus-Neptune conjunction, now we're gonna see that Saturn is there. So it can ground us, but this is a commitment day where you're being kind of tested in terms of your commitments. Relationships get serious, and creative projects can also get structure. I think that's the positive thing. Possibly this is the day where you're like, I need to have realistic, you know, kind of like, you know, views of my relationships or my finances. And you need to have conversations about that. Maybe it's about setting boundaries. It's also probably about following through on promises. And Saturn Venus can help you build something that's long lasting. The only hang up is that we're not really entirely sure what it is that we're building or what we're doing yet. And Aries says you have to have a really good relationship with yourself to be able to figure out what you want and how you can kind of collaborate with other people. Now you'll see the moon in a trine, not just to Jupiter, but also to Mercury, although both of these are retrograde. So this can be a day where you're really having some deep, intimate kind of conversations and clearing out some of the muck and some of the fear. And then we're going to see the moon is going to keep moving, and it's going to come into a trine with the sun in Pisces midday. It'll keep moving. And then we're going to start to see by the end of the evening, it's starting to build into an opposition with Uranus and Taurus, but that's going to be more kind of what's going on Monday. Man, just something about these Pisces planets that are, you know, moving through and so heavily influencing the Mars stuff, specifically Mars and the connection to like Saturn, Neptune, and Venus. I think a lot of things are about to be exposed, and that could be out in the world, but that can also be in our own lives where we've been like keeping secrets or not talking about things or not kind of discussing our feelings, and maybe not even aware of where we're cutting ourselves off from being able to connect with other people, where we're not being authentic, where we're hiding from, you know, what it is we need to do or what actions we need to take. And that Venus kind of Saturn stuff that's going on can really show us if we're not satisfied. That means that we actually have to take some kind of action, and we're going to have to clear some stuff out. So, you know, it is what it is. Get your Kleenexes ready. I think between the eclipse and a lot of like the Scorpio energy, especially over the weekend, there's definitely going to be a lot of like clearing stuff out and having conversations about things that have been a long time coming. Now, I do want to show you guys what's going to be happening with the Mars transits for the 12 rising signs. As a reminder, I'm a Western astrologer. That's the kind of astrology that I like to practice. And I like to show this to you guys from the perspective of the whole rising sign system. And because Pisces, Mars is moving into Pisces at 0 degrees, you guys can listen to your whole rising sign to get an idea of what the better part of the next 5 or 6 weeks is going to kind of be like as you see Mars going through Pisces. I recommend listening to your rising sign first because that's going to tell you exactly which house Mars is moving into. And then also you can listen to your sun sign to see how it's impacting your energy or your career, your moon sign to see how it's impacting you emotionally. Definitely listen to all three to get a better idea of what's happening. And if you're a Placidus user like me, then you want to look at your chart and see where is 0 degrees of Pisces. Listen to the rising sign that's going to show you that. Sometimes you have to listen to more than one rising sign to kind of get the bigger picture, okay? And remember, my Pisces, my Scorpios, my Aries, you guys are feeling the effects of this big time, as well as the mutable signs, particularly like that 7 through 11 degrees is going to be, I think, feeling that the most. So let's start with Aries and Aries rising. For you guys, obviously being ruled by Mars, this is a very important transit for you. So you're going to be seeing that your chart ruler Mars is going to be dipping into Pisces. And for you guys, it's going through the 12th house. So a lot of that kind of mystical, magical vibes is what you're feeling. The 12th house is hidden realms. So it's about spirituality, your sleep, your bedroom, you know, private spaces, your subconscious. And Mars doesn't just rule you in your first house, it rules your 8th house, which can be about intimacy and shared resources and transformations as well. So the themes and the effects of Mars going through your 12th house in Pisces is really about where your typical assertive self is kind of like in the ethers. You're going to see that this is about, you know, intense transformative kind of changes that are happening behind closed doors. And so it's kind of getting filtered through your subconscious dreams, maybe some spiritual retreats, maybe it's going to be through healing centers, meditation, some kind of spiritual practice. And the energy here feels a little elusive for you. It feels like it kind of dips and it's going to wax and it's going to wane. So you're going to see that there can be really strong intuition, and really your energy is better spent towards healing old wounds and behind the scenes actions. So the effects that can kind of materialize are heightened sensitivity, psychic insights, really crazy dreams, but it does run the risk of isolation or avoiding some kind of direct confrontation. So I'm predicting for my Aries and my Aries risings that you're really going to be feeling pulled to resting and recharging, right? Particularly spiritually. So there could be secret projects going on. There could be, therapy that's finally kind of getting ignited. Just watch for some passive aggressive power struggles that can come up in intimacy. Maybe use this to really focus on dissolving some of like the ego barriers that are coming up this week, and really focus on, by the time we get to about mid-April, when this cycle is concluding, I think a lot of you guys are going to have breakthroughs in your own personal healing. And also this will lead to, more confidence and feeling a little bit more renewed, right? Aries, let me know how it feels. Obviously, there's a lot of action going on in your 12th house, so it can kind of feel a little confusing. For Taurus and Taurus rising, you guys are going to see Mars entering into Pisces, going through your natal 11th house. The 11th house obviously deals with friends. It's your social life. It's about communities. It's about your goals. It's also about just kind of like parties and kind of connecting and collaborating with other people. Now, Mars traditionally rules your 12th house, which is about solitude and spirituality and your subconscious. And it's also tied to Scorpio through your 7th house of relationships and one-on-one partnerships. So the themes here really are going to be about your hidden drive through the 12th house and relational intensity through the 7th. So it's blending with kind of collective compassion in the 11th house of Pisces. Here, the social energy kind of softens a little bit, and you can see that you're getting more active with groups. Maybe you're working out with friends. Maybe it means that you're a little bit more, socially kind of charged, especially with like the Mercury retrograde, to go after your dreams, go back and reconnect or network with old people. And I think that'll lead you to feeling more inspired. So you're going to be feeling inspired to do these things, but there can be some blurred kind of boundaries. And so friends might potentially drain you a little bit if you're giving too much, if you're doing too much, if you're socializing too much. And I predict for a lot of you guys that if you use this energy to join compassionate causes, spiritual communities, maybe to work out with friends or be a part of a collective that has a agenda that's near and dear to you, then you're going to enjoy it. Friendships will evolve through some kind of shared dream or collaboration. And yes, some of my Taurus and Taurus risings are going to see some relationship tempers that are going to kind of come up. There can be some tension with whether or not you can forgive friends or you can forgive relationships. Just avoid martyrdom. I think that can kind of come up here. And expect a lot of group opportunities in creative fields that are really going to start materializing by late March, which I really feel like it's going to help you boost some of your long-term goals. Good luck, Taurus. Let me know what happens. For Gemini and Gemini risings, you guys are going to be experiencing Mars going through the sign of Pisces in your natal 10th house. Obviously, a lot of mutable energy in the sky right now with your chart ruler retrograde and also Mars kind of moving into your 10th house. But this is actually a place where Mars does very well, Gemini. So traditionally, Mars is connected to your 11th house of friends, networks, allies, and goals. It's also connected to your 6th house, which is going to be dealing with anything connecting to your health, your habits, anything that also deals with collaboration with coworkers, that kind of stuff comes up. And it's moving into your 10th house. So when it moves into your 10th house, it's going to be infusing these two particular themes of community and also goals and your intuitive kind of flow. So your professional drive really comes online. And this is a time where I think that you're really reassessing a lot of your direction when it comes to your career, your status, and also your purpose. Your professional kind of vision is starting to kind of come, into full bloom. And I think it's less strategic. It's more inspired. You're also going to be feeling like career paths feel a little bit more fluid right now. Maybe there is some kind of success that comes through creativity or service. Just watch for unclear boundaries or escapism at work. There can also be some conflicts that can be happening with bosses or superiors. Maybe it means that you're changing jobs, going back to work. You're maybe looking to, get into a new schedule. And you're definitely feeling like you can get out there as long as you're emotionally connected to what you're doing and be very productive and also be a little bit competitive. Now, with that being said, I think for you guys, this is about really honoring what Pisces is about. And this might be about pursuing work in, hospitals, in service, in spirituality, in film, in music, creativity, and anything that's got like an artistic kind of flair to it, I think would be really good for a lot of you guys. Watch for the opportunity to get public recognition that's going to come through collaborating with with a compassionate leader. And also your health routine should improve, maybe through holistic practices. You might actually start doing something that's connecting to working in the healthcare field. And by April, you should be seeing that there's a pretty significant job shift that is allowing you to align with your ideal career. You just want to watch for overcommitting yourself to work, and also make sure that you're really rounding up the troops and you're working well with other people and you're networking if you're trying to get back into work as well. Good luck, Gemini. For Cancer and Cancer rising, you guys are going to be seeing Mars entering into the sign of Pisces in your natal 9th house. For you, this is moving through a fellow sister water sign, so it's going to be making some nice aspects to your natal Cancer placements, or potentially even Mars throughout this transit. Mars and Jupiter, excuse me. So as you see Mars going through your 9th house, it is tying in the energy of your 10th house of career, status, purpose, and reputation, as well as your 5th house of creativity, children, self-expression, self-employment, having fun. So naturally, when Mars is moving through the 9th house, there's going to be more action connecting to learning, traveling, education, anything that deals with legal matters, anything that deals with just going after what you want. Like the 9th house is about what you feel like your purpose is, right? It's about your vision for yourself and for the world. So it's tying in that energy of the 10th and also the 5th house into that. So I really feel like for a lot of you guys, sure, you might be traveling, right? Some of you guys might be starting school, going back to school. That can be happening as well. But this tells me that you're going to have a lot of professional ambition and feel very passionate about your 9th house stuff. So maybe about traveling, about education. And there can be like this philosophical kind of surrender that's happening right now with like the Mercury retrograde being there as well. So the drive really expands through your worldview, and it'll happen intuitively. And I think that what it'll do is it'll make you feel more so inspired to travel, right? To study. It can also mean that the energy can also feel a little scattered, but your faith will deepen throughout the process, and it may inspire you to want to connect with a mentor, a teacher, a guru, something like that. I predict for a lot of you guys that this means that there's going to be opportunities for spiritual journeys. It can also mean that there is like education that can suddenly kind of present itself, or taking a workshop or a course or certification. Lots of opportunities for creative projects, especially if it involves publishing or children or travel. And it's also going to soften some of the energies of your career house. And it means that you're really going in the direction of doing something that feels meaningful, but needing some guidance along the way. I would expect by the end of March, you're going to have a significant epiphany that's really going to lead to some major shifts when it comes to healing something either about your career or about your life purpose. And you'll really see that when Mars is in a trine with Jupiter, okay? Good luck, Cancer. I hope you enjoy that. I hope some of you guys get a chance to travel. That looks fun. For Leo and Leo rising, you guys are going to see Mars entering the sign of Pisces, moving through your natal 8th house. This is the house where Mars does pretty well because of its natural kind of association with Scorpio. Now, Mars deals with your 4th house of home, family, and anything that's kind of connected to your private life and your emotions. It's also directly connected to your 9th house of traveling, education, your belief system, and your philosophy about the world. And it's moving through the 8th house. So the 8th house deals with intimacy. This is about shared resources like taxes, child support, spousal support, inheritance, things that deal with insurance, and also transformation and intimate relationships. So as we see the 9th house and the 4th house kind of fusing into this transit, it's really fluid. Like there is a sense of maybe getting creative with new ways to fund family trips. There is opportunities for you to start reevaluating what needs to be changing, you know, what you're releasing or letting go of when it comes to old family karma, or some breakthroughs that can be happening with funding for education. There's so many things that can happen here. And it's a lot of like stuff that deals with partners' money too. So if you're in a relationship or a partnership, it can be a lot of that. This is really, I think, about approaching intimacy in a way where you can be more compassionate and kind of vulnerable and healing through that vulnerability. But there can also be some passive power plays, especially with money. And I would just say watch and be cautious with any financial mergers, because there is something that's not totally clear about other people's intentions or what they're wanting to do or how they're wanting to kind of, work together. Also, the 8th house is where, bills come due. So there can be a sense of scrambling to pay taxes or to pay off credit cards. There can also be some tricky kind of situations when it comes to refinancing or funding things. With that being said, I do feel like the prediction for you guys is that you're going to see this transform your relationships through intimacy and also being a little bit more empathic. There can be some family karma that's kind of getting cleared out right now, and family secrets that are kind of coming into the surface for release. You can also feel like the drive is just more inward, but I think as we're getting closer to April, there's going to be some major breakthroughs when it comes to shared finances, emotional bonds, and also just fostering deeper sense of security with other people. I think you guys are going to find that this is going to be a time where, especially with the sun going through there, so much of this is about like, okay, what am I giving up and like, what am I getting in return? And this is a time where other people, whether it's family, if it could be roommates, if it could be partnerships, are really having to step up and make you feel supported physically, financially, emotionally. These are going to be the topics that you guys are going to be kind of touching on over the next several weeks. Good luck, Leo. For my Virgos and Virgo risings, you've got Mars going into your opposite sign, Pisces, in your natal 7th house of relationships and others. Obviously, Mars deals with how you think, connect, communicate, maybe your siblings. It can also be neighbors or contracts. And it also rules the 8th house of other people's money, joint finances, investments. And this is a very kind of where do I stand with relationships type of transit. So very unusual because Mars only goes here every 2 years. But it's happening while you're in the midst of eclipse season, in your sign where you're going through a lot of personal changes. It's also happening at a time where Mercury, your ruler, is retrograde in the 7th house. So it's very obvious for Virgo risings, there's something that's needing to change in relationships. The 7th house is others. So this could be a therapist, your astrologer, it could be a business partner, your clients. It could even represent spouses and like significant partners. And what you're going to find is that it's pulling from that 3rd and the 8th house. So it's touching on intimacy, debt, finances. It's also touching on the 3rd house of documents, communication, and family. So likely what you're going to see is the themes are really about intense reevaluations of relationships. And that could be through writing, that could be through documents, that could be through conversation. And obviously Mars going into the 7th house is going to bring a lot of action and having to connect with other people. So if you have like a service business, if you have clients, if you have a marketplace, very busy. There's a lot of going back and forth with others. The positive is that I think that even though there could be some probing talks going on, I do think that this will soften a little bit because it's going into Pisces. So it means that your relational drive becomes a little bit more understanding, a little bit more empathic. This means that partnerships can actually inspire you spiritually. It also means that boundaries can like start to kind of dissolve in relationships. You just want to watch for like the risk of codependency or potentially like unspoken resentments that you're having with other people. There can also be a lot of back and forth as to whether or not you're getting what you need from others. And that could be in an intimate sense, in a financial sense, in an emotional sense. I predict that if you're a single Virgo or Virgo rising, there's a lot of action trying to get you back into putting yourself out there and potentially considering connecting with others. If you're in a relationship, you're going to notice your partner is going to be a little scrambled right now with the retrograde. You're also going to notice with Mars going through there, they're really feeling motivated to get busy, to make money. And they're really focusing on themselves right now. And so maybe you're just kind of supporting them going through this change of who it is that they're becoming. I do think that intimacy issues can be healed, but it is through surrendering and being vulnerable. And I would expect that there's some major relational turning points that are going to start to happen. First, around mid-March, when Mercury and Mars come into conjunction, some Virgo and Virgo risings are going to go, this isn't working, or we can't come to an agreement, we can't come to a settlement, and you're going to go snip, snip. While others are going to be feeling like it's an opportunity to renegotiate, reconnect, and the relationship becomes a little bit more fluid, and there can be a little bit more support or better support that's coming by the time that you're getting to the end of the Pisces, Mars and Pisces transit. So you'll see that kind of closer to April in about a month and a half. Okay, so Virgo, my goodness, so much stuff is happening here. I've heard some crazy stories with Virgo and Virgo rising. Some of them that are going through, divorce proceedings and they're trying to do settlement or child support. Others that are dealing with partners that, they're separating from, but they haven't gotten their money right. Others where they've got relationships where they've been like hiding something financially. So obviously touch wood, I hope that's not the case, but whatever it is, it's definitely getting ready to get shaken out. All right, we got Libra and Libra rising. What's up, Libra? You guys are going to be seeing Mars going into the sign of Pisces, moving through your natal 6th house. And Mars is picking up the energy of your 2nd house of money, resources, values, and spending, and the 7th house of relationships, partners, and others.
So the sixth house, you know, I'm a big fan. I think I've said this before, but I'm a big fan of when malefics go through the sixth house. I feel like it's a lot easier to kind of navigate. The sixth house is going to deal with your work, your health, your routines, your pets, your office space, your coworkers. And Mars means you're willing to spend more money or more effort on these things. It can also mean that it's including or involving relationships or partnerships in some capacity. So the theme here is how you can get busy doing things to better yourself and your relationship together. This also means that there's going to be a lot more action that's flowing into service-oriented kind of habits. So your drive is really going to focus on healing routines. I think the effects here means that now your work feels a little bit more compassionately driven. Maybe your energy is fluctuating. Your health can improve via meditation practice, soaking, you know, swimming, being by the beach. You just have to watch for risking over sacrifice. You also want to keep an eye on pets and anything that deals with pets' health, what you're feeding pets, you know, how pets and kind of their routine and their health kind of come up, especially through the retrograde. And I predict for my Libras and Libra risings that you're just going to find that you're just naturally, intuitively, really focusing on, you know, revamping your daily life and your routine. Relationships, whether that's with coworkers or with romantic partnerships, are going to be influencing your self-worth in a positive manner. And I would expect that job or health insights arrive somewhere around March 13th when Mars starts coming into conjunction with the North Node. This may mean that, you know, you take on a destined job, there is a new service that you're giving. It can also mean you're getting back to the gym or you're working your way through some kind of health habit or letting go of a bad habit. And it's really going to culminate, I think, in a more balanced kind of sense of self, and also just kind of leaning more into service roles that are going to be more empathic or health or wellness kind of related. Remember that this is also 12th house to your 7th. So this could represent where, you know, partners are going through a difficult time or they're having issues with their health or having issues with sleep, and you're trying to help kind of tend to some of those things. Libra, I hope it's a good one for you guys. Let me know what happens. For Scorpio and Scorpio rising, you guys are obviously ruled by Mars, so this is an important transit for you. And Mars is entering Pisces and a fellow sister water sign at the beginning of March on the 2nd, so it will be making some trines to your Scorpio placements at some point. And you will also be getting some grand water trines, which I think can be really great for my Scorpio rising charts. Now, Mars doesn't just rule your 5th house of creativity, play, self-employment, and children. It's also directly tied to your 6th house of health and habits. So Scorpio, as you see Mars, that's going to be kind of diving into your 6th house, really what it means is that there needs to be a regular, reoccurring making time for health, making time for pleasure, making time for play. And I think that you're going to see that as it goes through the 5th house, you know, passion can be very artistic, it can be very romantic, there can be a lot of action revolving around children or dating. This is also where creativity really starts to surge. But there can also be some drama that can be happening here. So if you have kids, some drama with your kids. If you don't have children, it can be about children or having children. There can also be a lot more action when it comes to playtime, creative collaboration, and also self-expression, so being on stage. As you're going through that Mercury retrograde in that house, I do think that you're trying to figure out, what can I offer other people? What do other people want? And it's trying to get you to focus more on bringing the energy to what you're actually going to enjoy doing. And integrating a little bit more in your schedule where you can find that balance between work and kind of play time. My advice for you guys would be watch for where romantic opportunities can happen. Try not to kind of like idealize you know, projects or people, and channel this energy into art or love affairs. I think that your self-image, because Mars represents your body, it can evolve a lot spiritually, and health benefits can actually come from doing something that's kind of creative. So painting, dancing, playing an instrument, that can really kind of help you feel like you're in the flow. And also rest. Rest is going to be very important here as well. I think that by the time that we're getting to, you know, April, especially when Mars starts kind of coming into sextile Uranus, there's going to be a lot of creative breakthroughs. And I think that you're going to find that that's really going to enhance your relationships. It's also going to enhance your personal joy. I hope you enjoyed this one, Scorpio. Let me know what happens. For Sag and Sag rising, you've got Mars going through the sign of Pisces in your natal 4th house, obviously squaring you by sign. So especially if you have anything, I would say from about that 7 to 11 degrees, really watch over the next week. It's going to definitely start kind of kicking up. Mars rules your 12th house of your subconscious, behind the scenes, self-undoing, sometimes sleep or bad habits. It's also connected to your 5th house of creativity, dating, children, and self-expression. And Mars is moving into your 4th house. And the 4th house deals with your home, your family. It can also deal with your roots. It can deal with the past and your emotional foundations. Because we're tying in the themes of the 12th house and also the 5th house, it means that the positive is that you can be a little bit more playful. There can be more passion. Maybe it means that you're working through some of your hidden emotional depths and things that are connected to your inner emotional security and things that are tied to your childhood, things that are tied to your past. And you're working through that. And you're trying to kind of rebuild your roots in a more compassionate manner. I think it can be great to kind of see where home life is flowing intuitively, but emotions can really overwhelm you over the next couple of weeks. There can be opportunities to heal family issues, but there can also be some family kind of square-offs that can be taking place. And there's a tendency to kind of want to escape having to deal with, home and family kind of related things. I predict that, if you spiritualize your space, you're burning candles, right? Maybe you're burning incense. Maybe you're just trying to kind of do some spiritual upkeep in your home. It can really help. And you can also see a lot of creative urges kind of come through. That's going to inspire you to really appreciate having that peace and also solitude. There can be some family resolutions that can kind of happen throughout the transit that can lead to emotional renewal and feeling more inspired with work. But I'm not going to candy coat this. Mars going into the 4th house means that you might notice there's like more noise around your home. If there's construction, you also are going to be really focused on home security or home protection. Watch for like water heaters, any issues with hot water, problems with things kind of breaking down in the home that can kind of take place. And there can be much more of a need to be careful when you're dealing with hot water. So think of like cauldrons, kettles, anything like that, hot liquids, soups, be very careful with that stuff. And then if you're working with anything that's hot or sharp, and my advice is when you have Mars going into your 4th house, have a to-do list of things that you've been meaning to work on within the home. In particular, if you have creative spaces or if you have an entertainment area or children's rooms, that's what I would be kind of working on, so it can diffuse some of that Mars energy, which can bring a little bit of tension in how you're kind of dealing with either roommates, family members, or just people that you live with, okay? Good luck to my Sagittarians. Fingers crossed, I'm hoping that this is not another potential move for you guys. I know you've had a lot of them in recent years. All right, we've got Capricorn and Capricorn rising. You guys are going to be seeing Mars going into Pisces in your natal 3rd house. And obviously the 3rd house is kind of pulling from the energies with Mars from your 11th house of friends, goals, and allies, as well as your 4th house of home, family, and anything that deals with your roots or the past. So as Mars goes into your 3rd house, this is the house that deals with your mind, communication, your neighbors, siblings, vehicles, short distance travel. And it's tying in that 11th and 4th house theme. So really this is where the mind speeds up, and there could be a lot more quick distance, trips, road trips, a lot of like meetings and back and forth correspondence. It can also mean that there's a lot more of an emphasis in communicating either with neighbors or with siblings as a result of family situations. You may feel that ideas are more inspiring to you now, right? But there's not a lot of clarity. You might also feel like, okay, there maybe has been some sibling issues or some issues going on with your neighbors, and that can kind of soften, but there still is room for like misunderstandings and miscommunications. I predict for you guys that this is actually a really great time for really focusing on intuitive learning, journaling, learning divination, anything where you can maybe meet with an online group and do some writing or do some learning. I also think that this can be a time where if you're thinking about moving or settling somewhere, you may be going and looking at new areas before you make a decision to really pick up and move, or there could be some documents you have to review. Slow down, make sure you read the details before you're signing leases or agreeing to buy cars. I also think that by March, you're going to find that there is going to be lots of profound conversations that you're either having with family or potentially with relationships that are going to help you figure out where it is that you want to go, where you're going to get settled. And it's also going to foster, I think, a lot of new networks and opportunities to feel supported by your friends and also your community. Hopefully this is helpful for you. This is very important, this Mars transit, because it is influencing Saturn and Neptune in your 4th. So if you're one of those Capricorns or Capricorn risings who's contemplating moving, or if you're having to relocate or deal with family stuff, communication is going to be so important because it's going to be showing you what you need to do now to prepare for some of the bigger changes on the home front coming for you in April. Good luck. For Aquarius and Aquarius rising, you guys are going to be experiencing Mars going into the sign of Pisces, moving through your natal second house, pulling on the energy of your 10th of career and status, as well as your third house of communication, learning, and contracts or the mind. So when Mars goes into the second house, obviously one thing that you can see is that it can honestly really light up your financial sector. So this deals with your values, your possessions, your kind of money habits, and anything that deals with your self-worth. Tying in the third house of communication and the 10th house of career, it means that you're going to be feeling more driven to express yourself and your values and kind of talking about what you need. So there can be a lot of negotiations, there could be contracts, you could be working on websites, there could be proposals. This could also mean that you're really refining your worth and you're doing that intuitively. Resources can kind of flow more compassionately as well. And so you may be wanting to spend more money on things that involve your career, things that involve travel or learning. And money matters will really inspire you creatively, but spending can be a little scattered here. So be mindful that sometimes with Mars in the second house, there's just a lot of output and it's like there's all of these expenses that are kind of coming up and there can be a tendency to kind of spend money impulsively. This is really about building empathic abundance. And for those of you guys who are wanting to make money in educational ways or through writing, this is kind of like the beginning process of you getting ready to do that. I also just encourage you guys to really think through anything that deals with purchases, whether it's gadgets, it could be cars, it could be spending money on trips, because this is very much influenced by what's going on with Saturn in your third house and also the Mercury retrograde, okay? But at the end of the transit, I think it's going to bring you a decent amount of cash, especially with the eclipse that's going to be in your 8th house. It does look like suddenly there's some breakthrough with partners' money, breakthrough with taxes, investments, inheritance, that now is kind of putting more money in your pocket. The question is, what do you do with it? And you really need to think things through before you make a purchase, okay? All right, and then finally, last but certainly not the least, we've got Pisces and Pisces risings. What's up, guys? So you guys are going to be going through your Mars in Pisces transit. So if you happen to be Pisces Sun, Moon, or Rising, you'll be having a Mars transit. And Mars is directly connected to your second house of money, resources, and personal values. It's also directly connected to your 9th house of travel, education, and your beliefs. So Mars in the first house is a great transit for your Pisces rising because it represents getting up, getting a move on, having a goal, having an agenda. And I think you're really going to get a lot of stuff done. And that's because it's really energizing your sense of self and your identity when it's in the first house. Because it's tied to your money and it's also tied to your beliefs, there is this sense of resources that are going to feel like there's more of a drive, like you're more driven to work, you're more driven to make money, you're willing to take risks and kind of be a self-starter. And that may mean that it's things that are tied to education, teaching, training, traveling, 9th house themes. It could also mean that this is really about marketing. That could be another way of looking at it. And really compassionate like action. And you're infusing a lot of your kind of like persona with taking this action, but you're not feeling aggressive. It's more kind of intuitively like, yes, I can do this. I can make this happen. I believe in this type of vibe. And this is where you're personally going to be embodying more of like the spiritual warrior energy. So your drive, I think, is going to surge, but it's going to be more your intuition. And then if you notice that fatigue is hitting, then you're going to kind of pull back a little bit and you're going to kind of realize, okay, hold on, I need to kind of pace myself. And you're going to be willing to take risks. But I think that this is going to be like a process. We're still going through the Mercury retrograde in your sign as well. I like that it's going to be trining Jupiter, which is your traditional ruler. So this means that you're navigating, taking risks when it comes to travel, creativity, dating, self-expression, children. And I also think that for a lot of you guys, you're just reclaiming your personal power. A lot of Pisces and Pisces risings are going to go through a final kind of like relational clearing. And so as you go through that clearing, it may incentivize you to kind of invest in yourself. And you may feel like your values, your beliefs are all now transforming. You'll see this really peak, especially when Mars is conjunct your North Node in the first house if you're a Pisces rising around the 13th of March. I think this is going to be leading you to kind of like this destined self-evolution and really feeling more inspired when it comes to your growth. And believing in yourself. Maybe a lot of you guys are also making changes in your dietary habits. I could see like, oh, I'm not eating this or I'm cutting that out. And really prioritizing on, really trying to focus on your physical appearance and just feeling a little bit more confident in the skin that you're in. Pisces, let me know how this manifests for you guys. I hope it's a good one and that you guys enjoy that. All right, well, that is your astro weather for March the 1st through the 8th, 2026. Obviously, this week is a doozy with all the transits that we've got going on between the eclipse, the retrograde, Mars going into Pisces, Kazemi. So watch the channel for some of the other peppered videos that I'm going to be putting in on some of these transits, so that way you guys can see more. But at the end of the day, really the lesson I think of this week is release what is not serving us. We have to trust the process. We have to have that kind of trust fall with the universe. And remember that we are allowed to rest. There would not be so much energy in Pisces without that. When we rest, we're able to kind of go more with the flow, and we can also give ourselves the space to be different than we were last week. So this video is kind of like your reminder that you're exactly where you're supposed to be right now. Even though the future is not figured out yet, keep showing up, trust the process, and don't forget to like this video if it aligned with you guys, if you felt that it was helpful. Give me that thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so that way you can see more of these videos. Drop your rising signs in the comments. Let me know how you're feeling with Mars going into Pisces, what manifests for you guys. I do like to try to get back to them, and I get a kick out of some of your comments when you guys tell me some of your stories. If you want to see more about me and my work, click the links in the description below. Head over to beyondtheveiledtarot.com. I teach astrology, I teach tarot. I've got all kinds of digital calendars and transit calendars to track your personal transits in your iPhone or Google Calendar, so you can stay up to date with what's going on in the cosmos. Until next time, I hope you guys enjoy your Sunday and the rest of the week. I'll see you back here on Tuesday. Take care.